The lore of Dracula, the real history behind the vampire legend. In the summer of 1462, an Ottoman army marched through the forests of Wallachia and found something no soldier could forget. The road ahead was not guarded by walls, it was guarded by bodies, thousands of them, men, prisoners, enemies, and civilians, lifted high on wooden stakes, their corpses dark against the sky, their faces frozen in agony. The stench hung in the heat, the birds circled overhead, and somewhere beyond that forest of the dead waited the man who ordered it, Vlad Dracula. To history, he would become Vlad the Impaler. To legend, he would become something far worse. But was Dracula only a fictional vampire born from the pages of a Gothic novel? Or was the legend created from something darker, older, and terrifyingly human? Before Dracula had fangs, he had a throne. Before he haunted castles, he ruled the battlefield. And before he became immortal, he became feared. Vlad III was born in the 15th century in a land caught between empires. Wallachia stood at the edge of Christian Europe, pressed between the ambitions of Hungary and the expanding power of the Ottoman Empire. It was a borderland of shifting loyalties, assassinations, betrayals, and war. A place where rulers did not survive by kindness, they survived by terror. Vlad's father belonged to the Order of the Dragon, a chivalric order sworn to defend Christendom against Ottoman expansion. From that symbol came the name Dracula, meaning the dragon. Vlad, as his son, became Dracula, son of the dragon. But in the whispers of enemies, the dragon became something more sinister. As a young prince, Vlad was sent as a political hostage to the Ottoman court. There he learned the language of power. He saw discipline, strategy, cruelty, and fear used as instruments of empire. And when he returned to Wallachia, he brought those lessons with him. But the truth was even darker. Wallachia was not a peaceful land waiting for a noble ruler. It was a fractured land filled with rival nobles, foreign pressure, and constant danger. Vlad's family had been betrayed. His father was murdered. His brother was buried alive. In such a world, mercy could look like weakness, and weakness could mean death. So Vlad built his rule on a message no one could understand: obey or suffer. His chosen punishment became infamous: impalement. It was not just execution, it was theater, it was warning, it was psychological warfare made visible. A stake driven through the body, a slow death beneath the open sky. A public display meant to silence rebellion before it began. To his supporters, Vlad was a defender of Wallachia, a ruler who punished corruption and resisted Ottoman domination. To his enemies, he was a monster wearing a crown. And then came the war that would seal his legend. When Sultan Mehmed II advanced into Wallachia, Vlad did not meet him like a conventional king. He struck from the shadows. He burned villages to deny supplies. He poisoned wells. He used ambushes, night attacks, and terror to weaken a far greater army. Then the Ottomans reached the place that would become legend, a field of the impaled. Some accounts describe thousands upon thousands of bodies, a silent army of corpses, arranged as a message from Vlad to the most powerful ruler in the region. This was not only violence, it was a language, and every soldier understood it. What they found next would become legend,
because Dracula's terror was not only in how many he killed, it was in what his enemies believed he was willing to become. Stories spread across Europe. Some said he dined among the impaled. Some said he washed his hands in blood. Some said he took pleasure in suffering. Whether every detail was true mattered less than the fear they created. In the medieval world, reputation could travel faster than armies, and Dracula's reputation became a shadow. But Dracula did not become a vampire because of history alone. For that, the world needed something older, something buried in graves, whispered in villages, and feared after sunset. Across Eastern Europe, long before Bram Stoker wrote a word, people feared the restless dead. In isolated villages, death was not always seen as final. Disease moved through families without explanation. Bodies changed in the grave. Blood sometimes appeared at the mouth of the dead. Hair and nails seemed to grow. The body bloated. The skin tightened. Today, science can explain these things, but in a cold medieval village beside a fresh grave, explanation was not so simple. When children died, when cattle weakened, when sickness spread from house to house, people asked a terrifying question. What if the dead had returned? The vampire was born from that fear, not as a charming nobleman in a cape, but as a corpse, a plague, a hunger, a thing that came at night and fed on the living. Villagers opened graves, they drove stakes through bodies, they cut off heads, they burned remains, they used garlic, holy symbols, prayers, and rituals to protect themselves from a horror that lived between religion, superstition, and grief. And this was the ancient soil from which Dracula would rise. A world afraid of death, a world afraid of disease, a world that afraid that the grave was not strong enough to hold what it buried. And this is where history began to turn into myth. Centuries after Vlad's death, his name survived in chronicles, pamphlets, and dark stories. The brutal prince of Wallachia became a symbol of cruelty, blood, and absolute power. Then, in 1897, Bram Stoker gave the world Dracula. Stoker's Count Dracula was not simply Vlad the Impaler reborn. He was something new, an aristocratic predator, ancient and seductive, moving from the old world into the modern one. He lived in a castle, he commanded wolves, he crossed oceans, he entered bedrooms like a nightmare dressed in elegance. But beneath the Gothic beauty was something familiar. The fear of invasion, the fear of contamination, the fear of corrupted blood, the fear that evil could look civilized. Stoker took fragments of history, folklore, travel writing, superstition, and imagination and shaped them into one immortal figure. Dracula became more than a villain. He became a vessel. Inside him lived Vlad's brutality, the vampire of village folklore, the anxiety of disease, the dread of foreign threat, the seduction of darkness, and the oldest human terror of all, death refusing to stay dead. That is why Dracula survived, not because he was the first vampire, not because every detail came from history, but because he stood at the crossroads of reality and nightmare. Vlad Dracula was real. Wallachia was real. The Ottoman Wars were real. The impaled bodies were real enough to haunt the imagination of Europe. And the vampire was real in another way. Real in fear. Real in belief. Real in the trembling hands of people who listened at night and wondered if something was outside the door. Dracula survived because he was never only one thing. He was a prince, a warlord, a monster, a memory, a warning. He was what happens when history bleeds into folklore, and folklore becomes immortal. In the end, Dracula does not frighten us only because he drinks blood. He frightens us because he reminds us how easily human cruelty becomes legend, how war can turn rulers into demons, how grief can turn the dead into predators, how fear can give a name to the darkness. And somewhere beyond the mountains, beyond the ruined castles and mist-covered forests, the legend still waits, not alive, not dead, but remembered, because Dracula was not born from single nightmare. He was born from all of them.